Getting ready for our third and final panel discussion of this 2020 BioStock Life Science Summit. Today's panel will focus on partnering and business development and, of course, the effects that the ongoing pandemic has had on the process of business development and the deal-making process, basically. And with me today to discuss these very important matters, I have a very distinguished panel comprising of three highly experienced people. And I'm very proud and pleased to present to you. We have Anna Gran, who is Business Development Manager at Novo Nordisk. We also have with us Toon Bakin, who is Director of Business Development at Amgen. And last but not least, we also have Lubor Gal, who is Senior Vice President and Head of Europe at the transaction specialist firm Locust Walk. First of all, welcome to all of you. Nice to have you. How are you doing?
Great, thank you.
Thank you,
Jonas.
Well. Everything fine.
Great. We're going to dive straight into it with a short presentation round. I will give you each 1 minute to say a few words about yourself and your respective roles, what you do. So let's start with you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Jonas. Hello, everybody. I recently joined Novo Nordisk. I am currently working in, I used to work in their early space of R&D, business development, working with scientists and startups mainly. Now I have moved into the late stage commercial business development space. I'm working with Novo Nordisk in a global role mainly with projects that are either in the clinic or already commercialized and on the market. So happy to be here today.
And happy to have you, Anna. Toon, you're up next.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Jonas and BioStock, for the invitation to this event. About more than a year ago, I joined Amgen, which was post the New Evolution acquisition. I'm pretty sure many people are familiar with that one. I'm being part of the global transaction team based in Europe. The majority of our people are based in Los Angeles on the West Coast. But obviously, we have a smaller team here in Europe as well, not necessarily focusing on European deals or ex-US deals, but it's basically the way it is. I have been in BD for a while. Nycomed, Takeda, obviously Nycomed acquired Takeda, and last but not least, of course, New Evolution, which was acquired by Amgen. From a deal scope, I have been involved in a number of transactions, even the COVID-19 one in June this year with Amgen. And my deal experience is ranging from M&A deals, primarily in emerging growth markets, to licensing deals and even equity investments. So that's in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, that's quite a lot. Thank you very much, Toon. Lubor, you would like to say a few words about yourself and what you do as well? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to be on this panel. A few words about Locust Walk. Locust Walk is a life science transaction firm. We're offering corporate strategy, market research, strategic action, and capital markets capabilities on a global scale. We act as a strategic partner to executive management, in which we can take care of all the business development needs, but also can do capital raising. And more, we're asked to do corporate and portfolio corporate strategy work. We're not consultants, but we are deal makers. We think like pharma companies or investors. We speak their language. And we have built this infrastructure at Locust Walk in order to support our clients with all the tools and intelligence they need, or we need, in order to be successful at deal making. With over 100 years, hundreds of transactions ranging from simple vanilla licensing agreement to complex co-development and co-commercialization partnership for M&A transactions, our clients benefit from over 100 years of deal making experience and finding creative solutions. While we are agnostic in regards to therapeutic areas and could do medical device agreements, we have deep domain expertise in oncology, neuroscience, immunoscience, as well as rare and orphan diseases and gene and cell therapy. We are over 50 professionals operating globally as an integrated team in our headquarters in Boston and offices in San Francisco, Tokyo, Barcelona, and soon London. We're very happy to speak at this event. A couple of words of myself. I'm a scientist by training. I did a PhD in Berkeley a long time ago and been doing business development for over 20 years, mostly at pharmaceutical companies. Pleasure to be on the panel.
Thank you very much, Luo, for that comprehensive presentation. So let's dive right into it. I would say that despite the COVID situation, there certainly seems to be no lack of interesting deals being made. And initially, the pandemic sort of disrupted the whole business, the capital flow, and so on. But would you say that the BD process now is more or less back to business as usual? What do you think, Anna?
Well, you're right. There certainly was a drop, I would say, in activities and also in the general stock market in March this year. There was a lot of holding off and waiting, and there also was a spectacular rebound over the summer with some of the stocks reaching an all-time high. So in terms of I would say the general market and also deal making, there certainly has been a return to business. Whether that the return to business is as usual when it comes to BD processes, I'm not so sure. There certainly have been changes in the way we conduct business as we see today already with our event being virtual. I think we're going to move into that discussion a little bit more in detail through the panel. Let me just add a couple of small comments still. Certainly during this year, we've seen negative interest rates, which it means that having money in the bank is maybe not the wisest thing at the moment, and that potentially also could help the rebound that we're seeing in both in the market as well as in deal making. And from Novo Nordisk's point of view, we actually completed 2 of our biggest acquisitions in recent times this year. So that is testament to that deals certainly can get done also during the COVID pandemic.
Thank you very much, Anna. And Toon, you also mentioned a specific COVID deal being made earlier this year. How's the process been affected from your point of view?
Well, I think I agree with Anna. I mean, obviously there was a downturn or maybe a slight decrease in deal activity during the month May, June, not necessarily already in March or April. So deal activity has gone down a little bit. But on the other hand, we should not forget that basically the biotechs and the pharmas have missed out on 3 main bio events. And obviously the upcoming JPM will also be a virtual one. So there is still the time zone challenge for many companies. So that is one thing. And therefore, I think the pace is not back and business as usual is not applicable. From an Amgen point of view, Amgen made quite significant efforts in 2019. They acquired the Tesla product that came out of the BMS Celgene merger. We took a large stake in a Chinese company, Beijing, and obviously New Evolution was acquired, slightly smaller deal though. The good thing about the COVID situation, you can say, it's obviously due to the virtual environment easier to connect with big pharma. But it has put some pressure, I believe, on the truly quality of pitching, because there is maybe more access to interesting opportunities. But of course, the companies, including Amgen, will prioritize maybe even stronger because of the flow of opportunities. When it comes to deal assessment and DD work, I believe the situation has not really been much impacted by the pandemic, because these kind of things has always been done, at least to a large extent, virtually anyway.
So no real disruption there. In terms of the current deal flow and capital flow, that's quite significant into the sector then. Do you think this will continue if we look down the road into 2021, for example? Lubo, I suspect your firm is involved with a few of the deals being made. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, let me first talk about the capital flow. It's been at historic dimensions, I know, and it looks like it's not going to stop. I mean, in the U.S., there was a lot of concern about the U.S. election having an impact on the stock market. We see none of that. It may be overshadowed by the recent euphoria about the news about the vaccines for COVID. If you look at the stock market recently, it has gone up pretty much 10% since the news came out on the vaccines, which coincided a little bit with the election. So right now it looks like everything is on track and it's going to continue to 2021. So, but you have to be, of course, nobody knows for certain how long this party will last, because like I said, we're on historic dimensions, not just on the public market, but also on the private market. We looked at the quarterly reports, and what's good for news for European companies is that Q3 was basically almost $1 billion in private financing. This is historic, levels, across, I don't know, there has probably not been a year like this or a quarter like this in 10 years in Europe. And what is good is it's a financing across the board for European companies, from startups to late stage, led by companies like Lava, which raised $83 million, led by Novo, or a Danish-Swedish company, Galacto, which raised 64 million led by EA Ventures. So we're now seeing raises in Europe, which are on par with US companies, which is great news for European companies who always lag behind the US. So I think from a financial market, we see a very, very strong situation for European companies. And I think European companies are definitely advised to take advantage of it now, because while it looks like it's going to continue in 2021, nobody knows what next year will be. So I wouldn't wait. If any company has capital needs, I would take advantage of the situation now. On the flip side is, and that's actually good news for the biotech companies. What we see normally, if there's a strong capital market, that partnering is that biotech companies are more selective of partnering. There's not such a big need. It's actually, it's not good for. I mean, it's good for pharma, because pharma will benefit from the capital flow, because programs will maybe be taken further. Companies will have stronger data packages. So in some way, pharma will benefit. But on the other hand, it may need to pay more for those assets, because companies are less desperate to do the partnering. So I think it's actually a positive for both parties of our universe. But Ton is right. I mean, deal making isn't easy, has never been easy. My take is, if you look at the real significant deal that pharma companies have done, there will be less this year for the reasons that Ton has said. But also because some companies are aware of their cash flow. People don't know how the COVID situation is like. We're on the development side. We only see how drugs are being developed. But on the sales side, pharma companies are worried about countries not making payments for the drugs that they're spending. And that's a situation we had similar to the financial crisis 10 years ago. So I will expect that some pharma companies will be more careful than others about doing big deals.
Right. And in terms of, you mentioned earlier that the pharma industry, missed out on three big conferences, or the bio events that are usually like melting pots for companies to meet and for initial contacts to be made. Would you say that, or should I say, how should you, as a small company, as a biotech company, in these days, how should you practically go about it in the best way to sort of to get connected now? If you can't go and meet people in person, in the digital setting, what would be the best tips that you could give to a small company who wants to connect with a big pharma? I'm directing the question to you first, Anna.
Well, I think to an extent, virtual partnering is here to stay. It doesn't mean that it will completely replace or overshadow person-to-person meetings. I think the main limitation is, what I'm seeing and what my team is seeing, that a lot of from the big pharma side at least, a lot of the work that we do is relying on existing relationships. So I think that kind of initial step of cold calling is probably harder today. And so what becomes key is really leveraging that internal network, keeping it alive, and leveraging those existing relationships, but also really seeking out who could be a broker for me, who who sits on that pot of gold, which is like a phone book full of numbers to the VCs and the big pharmas that I need. You can just give a call and introduce me, because ultimately that cold calling is also linked to the difficulty of gaining trust over Zoom. When you're not able to maybe properly read the other person's face, or if you're seeing a virtual, a meeting room with lots of small faces, and it's hard to read the temperature. It's hard to really get that interpersonal trust and relationship to get going. So if you already sit on that, or somebody who trusts you who sits on that, that is an asset. So I would probably advise to really focus on that initially.
Thank you, Anna. And I see Lubo is frantically waving his hand in the small little window that I see him in here, saying, well, just give me a call, give me a call.
Absolutely. No, Anna's right. I mean, we are in a small industry, and we have built relationships. Of course, we have an extensive network to all people. We're not relying just on partnering meetings. This is good for people who know nobody, but if been in business like we've been many years, you know who to contact for what assets, and that's basically our job.
Yeah, and Toon, you have recent or very fresh experience and being on the seller's side, so to speak. What would be your best practice advice to hopeful biotech managements out there? How do they get the attention of a big pharma these days?
Yeah, sure. Well, as I mentioned, the virtual environment has, I believe, still facilitated and hopefully an easier contact with big pharma. Obviously, you need to have some network in place, and you need to have company support, board support. In New Evolution, we obviously did quite a number of efforts, but still relatively targeted. And I think it's fair to say that you need to update your potential target on a regular basis. Biotech companies need to be aware of that. The pitch should be pretty straightforward. It is still surprising that we receive pitches from companies in therapeutic areas that Amgen doesn't have an interest in. I think that homework should be done more proper. And after a first pitch or after an interaction with a big pharma, I think fast responses after the call are actually pretty important because there's so much other companies that ask for that 10-minute pitch. So I think fast responses, follow-ups, act diligent, and ask for feedback is very important. And another thing which is maybe sometimes challenging, but definitely worth exploring for biotech companies is try to get access to the big pharma at different levels in the organizations or different areas of the organization. The CEO, the CSO, the BD professional, all these people need to start thinking that, hey, we can use our network as well. And of course, that means internal alignment within the biotech, but it is actually quite important to get R&D backup, BD business backup, reaching out to the highest level in the organization. What we also see in Amgen is 9 out of 10 times counterproductive, because at the end of the day, the proposition will end up in BD if actually it will boil down from let's say the CEO seat. So that is a waste of time for both parties. So target your audience straightforward. Do not overshoot and go to the CEO of the company, but stay within the boundaries of a realistic approach.
Thank you very much, Toon. That was very very concrete tips. Anna, do you feel like you would like to add something?
Yeah, perhaps just one thing. I think what's good about all of this is that now we don't need to line up top managements on the buyers and the sellers side. Spending a month aligning on travel itineraries and cross-continental or Atlantic flights, it's possible to just have that virtual meeting set up tomorrow or next week. So I think when you do have done all the work that Tony is referring to, when you have that open line, then there are a lot of things that you can do a lot of faster. However, what we also see is that there are a couple of clear pitfalls. One is, anything that has to do with inspections, site visits. We actually had a situation where we were able to find one qualified person in a country working for Novo Nordisk in a country far away, able to conduct a diligence site visit and report back on results when live streaming isn't allowed. Cameras might not be allowed at the manufacturing sites or the labs. Photos might not be allowed. So that certainly is something that you might need to really rethink about. How do you stream, maybe over an iPhone, that the BD transaction person of the biotech holds in his or her hand the site? How do you actually show and disclose what you got and what it looks like? And the second just tip is, when you sit down and you negotiate the terms, what we see is, now that there isn't this hurry to get the next flight home, let's just hash this out and be done before we leave the room. We see 10 offers, 12 rounds of offers, back and forth, and that's great. But it also delays the actual signing of the deal.
So in essence, do your homework, don't waste anyone's time, and be prepared, and make sure that you have everything in place before you start negotiating, so it doesn't drag out forever. Thank you very much, Anna, for that advice. I can see now that our time is actually running out, and I wish we had put this panel last, because then we could go on and go on. However, we have quite a few more companies that are going to present, and they can do so then being pleased to know that you guys will follow them with your sharp scouting eyes. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.